And welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Jack and Laws from the Jack and Laws blog. They're on here to talk about the season so far for Fulham and also talk about their second book, which they wrote. And I look forward to hearing about the book and learning more about that. As always, on Cottage Talk, please do subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. It does help other Fulham supporters find us. Okay, guys, let's not waste any time. First of all, welcome, ladies, joining me again. We did talk last year. I'll go to you first, Jackie. Thank you so much for joining me and your good friend here.
Thanks for having us, Ross. It's great to be on. It's very, very cold over here in England at the moment, so you might be getting better weather than us, but we're ready to go on a chilly evening.
Okay. Well, sorry to hear that. Lorraine, how you doing?
I'm really good, thanks, Russ. It's really good to be on again, and we love talking Fulham as much as you do. So any opportunity, honestly, we love it. So thank you very much.
Okay, well, great. Well, listen, before we go through the 5 takeaways, it's funny. The reason why I suggested this to both of you is that I got feedback from you that you enjoyed it. So I'm like, you know what? Let's go through 5 takeaways with the two ladies here. So we're going to have some fun with that. But before we do that, let's talk about your second book. Laws, tell us a little bit about the second book.
Well, it's called Caught in Possession, and it follows the book Crossing the Line, which was our first novel. Now, that is based on a fictional Fulham team because we love Fulham so much, we have to write about it in our spare time.
Right.
And in this book, the team is has just been promoted to the Premier League, so it's fighting to stay up. That's familiar to all Fulham fans. Not this season, amazingly, but in the book, that's what's happening. And also, they're on a European tour because they've qualified for the Europa League in the book. So, but at the same time, our fictional owner, and I'll emphasize the fictional owner aspect here, is struggling with his finances, and he's trying to get another stand done, the Putney stand, but the bank's given him a lot of very strict conditions, of which he's really under a lot of pressure to meet, and he can't delay because otherwise basically it could be a bit shaky for the club, and there is someone lurking in the wings who would be very keen to take over the cottage. So Jackie, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, it carries on where Crossing the Line left off, but it is an independent story. So if you haven't read Crossing the Line, but you fancy reading the new one, that would work. It was great fun for us carrying on the story, picking up with the characters that we'd already developed, and particularly writing about the European tour. At one stage, quite often we do dwell on the actual European tours we went on with Fulham a few years ago. At one stage, we're on a train in Holland, and we're chatting away about the match we're going to, and we're so busy talking about Fulham that we realise that we've missed our station, and the guard comes up to us and points out that we're about to end up in Germany if we don't get off at the next stop. So there's some amusing Jack and Laws anecdotes based on real life in there, but most of the story is fictional, but it's good fun, and we'd obviously love people to read it and give us some feedback.
Okay. All right. Excellent. And I would highly recommend, Lorraine, please tell everyone how that they can actually find the book.
It's on Amazon.com. So basically you can just access it from Amazon. There's a link also on our website, which is www.jackandlaws.co.uk or jackandlaws.com. And so you can access it via the website. But there's plenty of match action in there. But there's also, it touches on a lot of themes which are very sort of prevalent in football, from the mental health of some of the players, from the scrutiny that they're under from the press and their private lives, some of it not wanted at all. Also, just a lot of, as Jackie was saying, just sort of an amusing take. So it's very light-hearted, even though there's sort of like those themes. It's meant to be a sort of like a good fun read, but without any real match jeopardy that there is in real life, which is we all live and breathe every week.
Excellent. Great. And I would highly recommend everyone get in that book. So, ladies, thank you so much for talking about the book. Let's now get into our 5 takeaways. So, Laz, I'm going to start with you, and then I'll go to Jackie. Give me your number 5 takeaway from the season so far.
Okay, well, they're not actually in any specific order, Russ,
Okay.
but we've got 5. So I think the first one is that, and I've heard other people on your show say this, that Marco really is a genius. So we sing about that at the cottage, and in fact, we've decided he's not a genius; he's a wizard as well. So
Right.
he has these sort of supernatural superpowers, because what he's done for many of our existing players, has sort of like transformed them from good Championship players into very good Premier League players, and that is not an easy thing to do. We're talking Bobby Decordova-Reid, we are talking Neeskens Cabano, Tim Ream, who we all love, and also Mitro, say no more, from the difference between Scott Parker season and under Silva. But also he has brought in amazing new players that he helpfully can speak Portuguese to them. Not that he needs to, because their English is perfect, but he's managed to get some very select, brilliant players integrated in the team. And I think it just shows his experience, his know-how, his intelligence, and his focus. So he is a genius.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that. Jackie, over to you. What's interesting about this, and I'm glad that Laz already mentioned this, and we talk about this a lot in Cottage Talk, is the players that she just named have all improved over Marco Silva. So when I look at a manager and I look at other managers, and I'm not just talking about Fulham, just in general, I ask the question, not just about wins and losses and draws, have the players improved under the manager? And I can say, I don't know a player that really has not improved. The only player that I could say that has not played well, we just haven't seen enough of him, and obviously Marco doesn't fancy him, is Kevin Mbabu. But the players that play are all playing for him, and so many of them have improved. And I can tell you, I can't say that for every Fulham manager in my history. I can say that with Marco. So I'm going to agree with Laz here and say genius.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I completely agree. All the people that Lorraine's mentioned, and just everyone in the squad. When you look back and you think this was our Championship team last year, yes, there's been some really good additions, but we're not just staying in the Premier League. We're not just in 17th place. We're right up there competing with the very best. When you look at the tables of top goal scorers, top assists, most dribbles, most tackles, most duels won, and all these kinds of things, there's always a Fulham player right up there, and often they are the people who played in the Championship last season. So it's been absolutely revelatory, seeing those guys, some of whom, like Tim Ream and Tom Kenny, we've watched them play for years.
Right.
We're now watching them at their absolute best, and it's just fantastic.
It is, Jackie. And what's great about this, and again, I'm not trying to slight any other manager, but it's also the approach. And you guys get to see it each and every match at Craven Cottage. I was just talking on our last show because I got a lot of comments from the Newcastle United supporters saying that Fulham came for a draw, and I disagree with them because they didn't come for a draw up at St. James's Park. Absolutely not. They always play in the front foot, and we can't always say that with other Fulham managers. Listen, I love Roy Hodgson, okay? One of my favorite managers of all time. But you know what? Roy would go on the road and he would try to nick a point. Marco Silva doesn't do that, Jackie.
No, definitely. We definitely weren't playing for a draw against Newcastle. And in all honesty, penalty catastrophe aside, we probably didn't do enough to win the game, but we were trying to win it.
Very fair.
And there have been so many other matches, and we've mentioned them in the blog, really. The matches against Man City and Man United, we've lost them, the way we've lost them because Marco's been going for the win. If we'd been playing for a draw, we might have got the draw, but we didn't because we were trying to win them.
Right. And that's my point. And Laws, back over to you. I've always liked managers that have been aggressive. And yes, we might have more points if he had taken a different approach, but I would rather go with this approach, Laws, because not only are you being entertained, but I think Marco's putting the team in the best position to win. I would rather go for the win than go for the draw.
I think any Fulham fan who witnessed the last time we were in the Premier League with Scott Parker would agree wholeheartedly. That was dire. We got the odd scalp like amazingly at Liverpool and Leicester and Everton, which were brilliant. But the fact we couldn't even score on the last day of the season in Craven Cottage, it was dismal. It was just so bad that everyone it would be happy just to be playing good attacking football and not always winning, but just actually watching some really exciting matches. And we're winning and watching exciting matches. So that's good.
What's funny about that, Jackie, is that I got into an argument a couple seasons ago with a Fulham supporter who kept messaging me on Messenger because he was complaining about the style of play under Scott Parker. And I would just, my argument back to him was, well, they're winning. And he would say, I want to be entertained, Russ. I want to be entertained. But what's interesting with Marco is that you're getting both. You're being entertained and you're also winning, because the formula is to play on the front foot. And I can't argue against that.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it is the best of both worlds, which is fantastic. And I also think it's the fact that we have lived through the Scott Parker era that makes this all the better. And even as you say, looking back to Roy, I mean, we both love Roy as well, but particularly that season when we came 7th, which felt amazing at the time, a lot of those points were from 1-1 draws away at slightly bigger clubs, and it was very much grinding out the results, and that worked. And we loved that team as well, and it led us to Europe, and it was all fantastic and it all paid off. But again, you look back at that and you think, actually, as effective as it wasn't exciting football. But now, we've got this fast, exciting, dynamic, the long passes forwards to just bypass another team's midfield from the defence straight down to one of the wingers, and then straight into the box, and Micho might even just score straight from that. And
right.
It's just amazing. You just transition from defence to attack, literally in the blink of an eye.
And that's what's so great about this, because I'll even throw this into your loss, and then we'll move on to number 4. I know we're focusing a lot on Marco, and I like to talk about Marco. Another factor here, and I'm glad that Jackie brought up Roy's seasons and that season that we got 7th. I can still tell you, I can't remember the matches. It might have been Liverpool, it might have been Manchester United. We still got hammered. The only time we've gotten hammered this season was against Newcastle United, and we kind of know why they got hammered. So they're in all these matches, and I think it's part of it is the approach loss.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, we saw it last season. I mean, that championship season was something else. I mean, it was just, I don't think any Fulham fan had witnessed that for maybe going back a few decades. I mean, you're talking of a different generation. We absolutely wiped the floor with all the teams in the championship. And Marco from the off was talking about it's an entertainment game. I mean, he got that, and he's very, very fan focused, which is actually quite unusual. You don't hear that many other sort of coaches or managers talking about it in the same way he does. And no one quite knew how he'd adapt to the Premier League, but the philosophy fundamentally hasn't changed. For the fan, it's very, very welcoming. So it's good. We're very happy.
And I think we all should be. We're fortunate to have him. My next thing with Marco is Mr. Khan, get your checkbook out and sign him up long term. That's all I'm going to say on that. Sign him up long term. I don't know what it's going to take. Get that man signed up long term, because you want the project that they're building to continue, and you don't want the threat of him leaving. Sign him up long term. Show him the money. I hate to do a little Jerry Maguire, but show him the money.
Yeah, and if they don't, I think there'll be a fan whip round.
I agree. I totally agree. All right, Lars, let's go to number 4. What's your number 4 takeaway?
Do you want me or Jackie to go next?
Okay, Jackie. I'm sorry. I'll go to Jackie.
Yeah. So we often say in the blog, we don't do stats because we're not that good at them and other people are lots better. So I've purloined this stat from Cottage Analytica, who we follow on Twitter, and what he does so well is he makes stats quite fun. And so this is an interesting and fun fact from him. Apparently, 1/3 of all red cards handed out this season, so 5 out of 15 red cards, have been issued to Fulham's opponents, which I find quite, I mean, what a stat. And apparently, of all the other teams, no one else has had more than one opponent sent off. So somehow we're doing things that are making life very, very difficult for other teams, so that they end up fouling our players so badly that they get sent off. Or in Crystal Palace's case, 2 players get sent off. So, you know, and I think one thing to add here is I'm not, and I don't think Loz is either, big fans of the players surrounding the referee, which they did do a bit during the Chelsea match. Although the Chelsea players were all doing it as well. It was a bit of a general melee, to be honest. But, you know, I don't think that's how players should behave.
I totally agree.
But most of these red cards have been such obvious red cards that no one's had to protest or anything, and you know the players have had to be sent off straight away. So you know, I think that's a really interesting stat, and again for a newly promoted team that we're obviously doing something a bit different that other teams just don't seem to be able to cope with.
Right, and that's a great point. And Laz, it's funny, it's in the situation from the get-go when you guys were at the Liverpool match, it didn't lead to a red card, but it led to a penalty. It's a similar situation we're talking about. It's the approach. It's the getting on the front foot. It's taking advantage of your opponent whenever you get a chance, quickly, very quickly. It's basically getting these teams on the defensive very quickly, and they're not handling it well. And I think it really goes to how Marco has them set up, but the players are the ones that are causing this. So you have to give credit to the Fulham players. But I do want to say one thing, and I want to get your thoughts on what Jackie also shared. I don't like the Fulham players surrounding the referee either.
No, it's not. It doesn't look good. It's not good for the image of the sport, I don't think. And you know, and the ref, you know, will obviously listen to the crowd when they shout VAR if we think it's appropriate. I mean, it'd be interesting to find out. I did see that stat, how many are at the Cottage and how many not at the Cottage. Obviously, Palace was away, but so are we turning into the Old Trafford of London, where like refs are on our side? I don't know, but I think maybe. You know, Mitro is very canny. He's very, very good, and that's having a good footballing brain. I don't think it's cheating. He puts himself in positions and invites the fouls, and he's good at it. Bobby's pretty good at it as well. Right. Yeah, I think there's a way to behave. Last week it was funny when the Chelsea player, when Felix got sent off, because everyone sang what a waste of money, and it felt good because it was all pantomime football, which was, you know, part of the entertainment value, and it led to the right results, so we were happy. But yeah, the red card thing is interesting. Yeah, we've got quite a few yellows, but we just don't need to make sure that they don't start coming back to us. There's not some sort of karma arrangement here.
Well, that's my only concern, Laz, is that we are getting all these, that it will come back to bite Fulham at some point, because these calls usually even themselves out. I just hope in our case it doesn't.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully. Yeah, I think we have had a lot of yellow cards, actually, far more than we would normally. When you think back to one of those European tours that we were talking about, was the one we got from winning the Fair Play Award.
I remember,
because we had almost no yellow cards that season. And this season,
was that the season where they got the red card in the last match?
Yes,
yeah, it was Gira.
Yeah. But even so, we still managed, because we had so few cards overall. We still managed to qualify. And yeah, things have changed a lot since then. And as we've seen, because of the smaller squad, if we're missing a player who's suspended, it's a big miss often. I mean, Vinicius did an amazing job standing in for Mitro last week, but I think, you know, when we've been without Robinson, we've missed him. You know, we massively missed Polina, the match he was suspended for. Yep. So the players have got to be careful. And as you said, what we don't want is people getting 2 yellow cards, and suddenly the red cards are going our way, not to our opponent.
Exactly. The way it's working out now is to Fulham's benefit, but it could turn the other way. And it's a good point by both of you to talk about the amount of yellow cards. And listen, I'll be the first to tell you, Laws, I think the accumulation of yellow cards with Anthony Robinson hurt Fulham against Newcastle United. So it's a valid discussion point. And I don't think we've talked enough about it on Cottage Talk about how Fulham are picking up so many yellow cards. So I'm glad that you guys are bringing that to the table. It's a valid point to talk about. Okay, let's go to number 3. Jackie, I'll go back to you. Give me your number 3 takeaway.
Laws is number 3.
Oh, Laws is number 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
There's a Goldman for you. Go ahead.
I think we are turning heads, and that we are turning heads this season, and it's like we've had a sort of a brilliant makeover. We're getting noticed on TV. We're getting plaudits left, right, and centre. Where the yo-yo tag is sort of becoming less frequently used, and quite frankly, at the beginning of the season, everyone predicted us to go down, or not Fulham fans, but anyone that didn't know about Fulham, because that is the odds are stacked against you going up. But now, obviously, that looks like that's not going to happen. And to go from a side that was predicted to go down to go to a side that's been sort of talked about in amongst the best teams in the division is quite incredible. So I think they've had a makeover and they're getting noticed. And I think that is one of our takes.
That's great. Jackie, your thoughts on that? And I have some thoughts about basically this turnaround from the media. I actually think it should be more, but that's just my opinion. You go ahead.
I think it's baby steps, really. We'll get there in the end, but I think we've taken people massively by surprise. I think there's a lot of lazy journalists in football, and it's really easy to say, 3 teams have been promoted, they're the favourites for relegation, and some pundits find it really hard to think outside that box. But we've really shaken things up, and I think lots and lots of us said, I'd be happy with 17th. And I think that's probably still the case for lots of Fulham fans. But, we're not 17th. We're not aiming for 14th or 15th. I think because we're all sensible, grounded people, we don't really think we're going to finish 6th either. But the fact that we're up there has really made people sit up and take notice. We're halfway through the season. This isn't a 1-month wonder. It's not luck. It's not a fluke. It's been come off the back of many months of consistently good performances, and the football world is beginning to wake up and see that we're not just little old Fulham anymore. We mean business.
No, I agree with both of you. The one thing that I want to add to it is that I'm glad, like you said, Jackie, there are baby steps, but I am irritated beyond belief that Brentford get more plaudits than we do, and I don't get that. But that's the one thing that really gets me. I understand that especially with Sky Sports being so close, but it just continues on and on and on. And you got Fulham here that I think are doing it the right way. I can ask you a little bit about a certain player who might have a gambling issue with Brentford. We don't have that issue, but anyways, let's move on from. I don't want to talk about Brentford. I want to talk about Fulham. So let's go to number 2. I think I'm now with. Who am I with now? I'm losing track.
This is me. This is
okay,
me.
I'm back to Jackie. Boy, I am all over the place.
It's us. It's us. No one can cope with the 2 of us together. So this is another bit of a stat, actually, but it's a well-known one, which is that other than West Ham, who obviously broke the rules a bit to get their win, we've only lost to the teams above us. Which again is incredible, especially when you think there are actually only 4 teams above us. And most of those losses have only been by 1 goal. And most of those winning goals by the other teams have been scored very late on in the match. So I think this is, you said about negatives earlier, and we don't really have any negatives, but this is the one thing where you think, there's room for improvement. Matches they're not even 90 minutes long. They're 95, 96, 100 minutes long. And you've got to play those whole 100 minutes fully focused, giving everything, because the other team will do, especially the big teams who've got these amazing benches with, the guy who came on to score against us from Newcastle, he cost £60 million or something. And it's like, well, obviously we can't quite compete with that, but you've got to be aware that that is what these other teams can do, and you've got to be prepared for it. And although, as Law said earlier, Marco's a genius and we sing that all the time and everything, this seems to be the one thing that his genius maybe slips up a little bit with, because sometimes his subs are a bit too late, sometimes they seem to be a bit too random. And this just seems to be the one failing of the team, is that we're vulnerable in the last few minutes of the game.
It's a great point. It's actually a common thread through this statistic that you're talking about. When you look at some of these matches, Newcastle United, Manchester City, even Arsenal and Tottenham, they're all late. All these are late. Laws, what's your theory on this?
Well, the squad's just not big enough in terms of sort of strength and depth, not compared to the bigger clubs. I mean, but they are so off the scale. I don't think we're ever going to replicate what they do, because it's just impossible. And quite frankly, I don't want us to be a Man City on Thames. It's just, so it's trying to get the right balance. But clearly, when you have got the quality of the benches of Man City or Spurs, Chelsea, I mean, it's so phenomenal that it's very hard to match. So I still think Marco's a genius, but yeah, he is a bit late with his subs, and some of them are like slightly sort of almost sort of seemingly random. But I think for the most part, he just can't match the quality on the pitch. I mean, I like Chalobah, but when you bring him on, he's not going to be the same as the quality of some of the other teams' midfielders. It's just not, and I like him. It's just it's of a different scale, and that's not Marcus's fault. That's the club.
It is, and Jackie, it's a great point. It really does come down to, at the very end, the game changers that they can have coming off the bench that Fulham just don't. So that's something that the Khans have to look at. Director of Football Tony Khan, they have to figure out how they want to handle this moving forward, because it's funny. I went to a match, my first Fulham match. It was at Reading, and it was at a season where this happened a lot too under Martin Yule, where they would lose all these matches or get draws at the very end. At the Medeski, it was a draw, but it happened a lot. So you have to ask yourself, why? Are the players tiring? In this case, I actually think it's the bench. I think Laws is right.
Yeah, I think that I think it's a few things. We just can't compete with the money that the bigger clubs can spend, but we could maybe manage things better, which we've done in so many other matches. The matches that we've won by one goal, like Brentford and Brighton, Marco's got it just right, and the players have got it just right, seeing out the game in a really, really professional and skilled way, which has been incredibly nerve-wracking, but also really exciting to watch. So it just seems to be something that just needs a bit more work. Plus, hopefully, January window open, Mr. Khan got to be in a good mood the way everything's going. Big checkbook. Big checkbook. Hopefully he can get some new players in, but obviously then you're back to, it's got to be the right players. They've got to bring something new, and they've got to fit in properly, which is not easy, finding always the right people.
Okay, great stuff. All right. To end the show, coming up next, we're going to go through the number one takeaway from Jack and Laws. I might have a bonus topic for them as well to end the show. Okay, let's go to number one. I think I'm going to get this right. Laws, it's to you.
Yeah, it is.
Well, finally, I got it right.
I mean, we've talked about it in general over the other points, but basically, I think one of our main takeaways is just the phenomenal belief and mentality that the team has this season. We are competitive against every side, home and away. We're not intimidated by anybody. And I heard Breda Hangeland on a podcast, I think last season, and he was sort of saying that you have to go into every match and think that you can win it. And this team does. And you can see that there is no, he sort of said, you can't have that soft underbelly. And you can see that there is a real belief. The mentality is absolutely rock solid. And we saw that from the off when we played Liverpool. And, Van Dijk was just standing there, and Mitro was, rushing past him. It was just phenomenal. And I think the other thing is that we have found different ways to win. We play attractive football, and it's great for the entertainment value. But we can win gritty matches like we did at Leicester or Southampton. So it's not always that pretty towards the end, but the fans will take that to get the points on the board. So the different style of sort of tactical approaches that Marco the Genius adopts is phenomenal. So that we're not necessarily going for possession-based football like we did last season, and it's just that's like the change in tactics in terms of the varying it just to so that it's very, very tailored to whoever we're playing, very bespoke, and he's. And it's just the belief that he has managed to instill that and that winning mentality, so that no one likes coming to the Cottage anymore. And even Man City, I think, wouldn't particularly relish us turning up at the Etihad. I mean, we're a team that no one wants to play, which I take as a massive compliment.
A huge compliment. And Jackie, I think Laws nailed it with her commentary on this. The one thing that I want to just mention is that I've talked about it on this show. I'm glad that Laws mentioned this. It's finding a way to win. It's the belief, but different ways to win. As she said, I can give you examples where we played attractive football and won, but then we had to grit it out against Leicester City, Southampton. There are different ways that they're winning matches that, to me, this is the reason why they are where they are. They're not just winning one way. They're winning several different ways, and they're extremely hard to beat. But it's the belief. It's going into that match, Jackie, believing that they're going to win. I'm telling you, I in my history, I can't remember that mentality for every Fulham team. I think these players believe they're going to win every match, and even Man City.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think it goes back, we were saying about Roy earlier. I think Roy's philosophy was let's not lose. And I think his team went into certainly some matches with that philosophy, and it worked. But yeah, Marco's philosophy seems to be we can beat anyone. And that's obviously been built up now over 18 months of championship wins, which then puts you in a great position to go into the Premier League and keep winning there. But yeah, it's the fact that there seems to be a solution to winning against whoever we're playing. And if it means digging deep and digging in and fighting back and holding on, then this team can do that because they're not just being coached to play pretty football and improve their technical skills. They've had this character building influence on them as well. And that, as much as the pretty football, is a joy to watch when you see how hard they're working and how much they want to win. And when they do win, it just makes it even better.
Right, absolutely. And that, to me, is the common thread throughout the season. It's the players' belief. They're putting in the best position to succeed. As we talked about some of the situations at the end of the match, there are a couple different things going on. But going into the match and the belief throughout the match is that they're going to win. And I love that about this side, that belief. And I'm glad that you guys had that as your number one. I know it was in no particular order, but I'm glad that we ended with that. Yeah. Guys, before we wrap this up, I do have a bonus topic. You guys aren't ready for this, but I do have a bonus topic for you. And it's in general terms. It kind of goes with, I mentioned the situation with Brentford. I can also mention the situation with Newcastle United with Joe Linton. And then, of course, the situation with Ivan Toney. I feel, as just a supporter of watching all kinds of different sports, I don't like that either one of these players are playing right now. Now, you can, in the case of Joe Linton, it was for drink driving. And I thought that they made the wrong decision by playing him against Fulham. I don't know how long he should be suspended, but I thought they should have taken that in consideration. The situation with Ivan Toney is even more unbelievable to me, that he's continuing to play with everything that's going on with him, with the gambling charges against him. Again, innocent until proven guilty. I get all that. But as a club, shouldn't you, while he's being investigated, not play him? I'm just curious your thoughts. If we put our Fulham hats on, if a Fulham player, I wouldn't want these players to play, including, I don't care who it is, Mitro, Paulinho. That's just how I feel. I'm curious how you guys feel about this. Laws, I'll go to you first. How do you feel about that?
I agree with you, Russ. I mean, we, when we're watching the team, we always, we'd like the gamesmanship and everything else, but we don't like it if any player sort of simulates and dives or, is sort of giving the ref too much aggro or whatever, because it's just unnecessary. And it's the same if they're doing things off the pitch. Yeah. And that's why I think it does become part of a sort of a club culture. And if there's things that are really sort of like just sort of something that doesn't align with it, then I think, I would like to think the club would take a stance. The trouble is, we might want that, but the amount of money in football, Ivan Toney must be their top scorer. I try to ignore them. And the only reason they get more airtime, I think, Russ, is just because they've been up for longer, that's all.
Yeah.
We'll overtake them, don't you worry, in terms of limelight.
That's why I have you on, Laws.
But so I'd like to think that, but I don't want to be all cynical or despondent about it. But just the amount of money, clubs and fans demand the points, So it's really hard for them to make these decisions, and I'd like them to, but I can see why they don't.
I can see why they don't. And Jackie, I want to get your thoughts on this. I know it's a hard subject probably for us to end, but it's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially with the situation this weekend and a decision that Eddie Howe had to make. And it was posed to me from a supporter of Newcastle United, and I could tell he did not feel good about the fact that he might play. He ended up playing. So I think it's a hard thing. As a father, I would have a hard time with a player playing that just did that. I would have a hard time with that. And then the situation with Ivan Toney, it's funny, over here, gambling is really bad for athletes to gamble. It's like, in baseball, they ban you for life. They literally ban you for life. It's a serious offense. So the fact that he's still playing is something that I've always wondered what people think about it. So I'm curious your thoughts on it. I agree with Laws. It's a hard one because there's so much money involved. But morally, I wouldn't want a Fulham player to play. That's just me.
Yeah, I think it's a really hard one. And I think what makes it harder is that in many ways, drink driving is obviously a worse crime than the gambling. But because the gambling relates to football and the drink driving doesn't, it kind of makes them more equal. What I find really odd about the drink driving is that what was he doing drinking so much that he was over the limit as a professional footballer in the middle of the season? Also, how stupid is he? Surely he either has someone who drives him around or he's well enough off to call a cab. The whole thing is absolutely bizarre. And if anything, just goes to show the guy's an idiot. And I'm not sure we'd want him playing for our club if you're that stupid. But the fact of the matter is, no, it's a crime. It's a really terrible crime because of the things that can come from it.
Exactly.
And no, we wouldn't want someone like that playing for Fulham. With the gambling, I find that even more strange because, as I say, if he was gambling on tennis, then he carries on playing football. That kind of seems okay. But he was gambling on football matches, but he's carrying on playing football. And what else has he been up to?
Who is he involved with, Jackie?
Yeah, exactly. Is there more to this? Is it carrying on? It's a worry in a sport which has got lots of money in it. Exactly. Having said all that, as we've said all along, you are innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
And it is a really difficult situation. It will be very interesting to see once we've gone through this period where they're still being investigated, and what happens if they are found guilty, what punishment they get, and how it's dealt with by the clubs as well. So I think it's a really interesting topic and one that will rumble on.
I totally agree, guys. And listen, I am one that is totally innocent until proven guilty. I'm 100% on that. My only stance on this is while it's being investigated, this is just me. I might make a decision as an owner not to play someone while the process plays out. Take that player aside while it's being investigated. I just think that is the smart move to do. But again, that's just that me. But as Laz said very eloquently, there's so much money involved. It does make things difficult. But if you're asking me, I wouldn't want Ivan Toney playing for Fulham, and I wouldn't want Joe Linton playing for Fulham right now based on what's been going on. I would want him to be suspended until this thing plays out. That's just me. I might be in the minority. That's just how I feel. Anyways, enough of talking about other players from other sides. Guys, it's been just such a pleasure talking to the two of you tonight. Thank you so much for joining me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Russ. It's been great. Thank you.
It's been great.
And before we go, one more time, Jackie, tell everyone about the book, where they can get it from.
So the book is called Caught in Possession. You can either find it on Amazon, search obviously under Caught in Possession. It's on our website, www.jackandlaws.co.uk. And the other place is in our Twitter profile. There's a link to it in there. So it's easy to find if you're looking for it.
Okay. And Laz, before we go, I just want the two of you to make a promise for me. I'm saying it to you. Please come back soon.
We'd love to. Honestly, Russ, thank you so much.
Because I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I told you guys a half hour. We've now gone almost 45 minutes, but honestly, I could probably talk 2 more hours to you ladies. It's been just fantastic, but it is late for you. So I do have to wrap this up. Before we go, always just want to mention, please do subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts to Cottage Talk. It does help other Fulham supporters find us. And please do check out the blog for Jack and Laz's blog. It's excellent. And of course, please do buy their book. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Cottage Talk. For Jack and Laz, I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, now part of the talkSPORT Fan Network.